Hampshire Supreme Court decision that allows this to happen, but against the wishes of the tin pot dictator in the black robe inside the room itself beyond the doors. One of the things that strikes me, Glenn, is the argument that the statists might give, the people who might support this man, they'll say, well, we have to allow the judge to be able to make the rules about how his court is going to work. You can't just allow people to come in with cameras. You can't allow everybody who wants to come in to come in. It would be chaos there. It would be unworkable. It wouldn't work. Now, what I thought was important there is to bring up this point in parallel to other points about airline pilots and passengers bringing guns onto planes and things like that. If you have a supposed right that is supposedly protected by the establishment of this government that extracts our income from us, and if we don't give it, we will be arrested and our property will be forcibly taken from us. If we have supposed rights that are protected by that government, and supposedly we give up a portion of our salary every week to make this government function, and yet the government then, in trying to protect our rights, has to curtail those very rights that are supposedly written to be protected, such as the right to keep and bear arms. Oh, well, I'm sorry, the government runs the airlines, and so you don't have the right to keep and bear arms. Well, I thought a right was a right. I thought you couldn't mess with a right. What about the right to be a journalist or free speech? Well, I'm sorry, you can't be a journalist. You can't have thousands of journalists in a courtroom. It wouldn't be workable. So the argument that these people give you is a practical argument to say, well, I'm sorry, but rights really do need to be attenuated, because if you allowed all your rights to operate, you wouldn't have a workable court system, which I think many people stop at that point. Don't you think? They say, oh, well, of course, that just makes sense, right?
Yeah. That's where people do stop, and of course, as you point out, they're in a dilemma.
Yes.
As if the body that is supposed to protect their rights, that is formed to protect their rights, infringes upon their rights, then how can it protect your rights?
Exactly.
So it is a dilemma, and even worse, Gard, from my perspective, is the fact that the government doesn't even abide by its own rules.
Yeah.
If we all knew what the rules were, and the government would abide by them, that would be a slightly different story. But in this situation, this judge is just changing the rules as he goes. But of course, he's not accountable to anyone, so he can do that because he has the power of the state behind him.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And if people are interested, they can go to freekeen.com. Of course, they're one of our advertisers, but I highly recommend freekeen.com to check out the latest about Sam. He writes some things that are posted there. Ian's been doing a great job following it, and and we're all good friends, and it's very frustrating to see this because Sam's such a good guy.
And the other thing that people need to remember is the other thing that the statists are going to say is that, well, he should just abide by the rules, and he should just do what he's told, and if he would do that, well, there wouldn't be any problems. Well, what good is a supposed right if you can't exercise it?
Exactly. The rights are supposed to be exercisable, and that's the key thing. If you've got a government that tells you this sham story that, well, we're established to protect your rights, and then you go to try to exercise those very rights that are supposedly protected, the right to be a journalist, the right to speak out, the right to protect yourself with a firearm, and they say, oh, no, you see, because this is our property. We own this property. We own the air above you. We own this property where the courthouse is, and even though you're supposed to get a fair trial, even though you're supposed to be able to be a journalist, even though you're supposed to be able to defend yourself up in the air, your rights need to be curtailed because it wouldn't be a workable system. People, instead of pulling back from the rights and saying, oh, well, of course, it just makes sense, we should let a few of those rights start to be attenuated here and there, they ought to stand up and see what they're doing. They're ruining the definition of terms. Rights are no longer rights, and they're slowly eroding their own ability to be able to function as real human beings.
That would be my last point, is what's happening to Sam could happen to anybody. And that's what people don't seem to get, is you think that you abide by the rules and you think that nothing's going to happen to you. And as we can see in Sam's case, all of a sudden the rules change and you aren't abiding by them anymore. Any of us could be in that situation.
You know, Glenn, just as an aside, I think I should mention, some people probably know you from your experiences as professional wrestler, working in the WWE, and they might be surprised to hear some of these things that you're saying, to know that you've been thinking about these things and watching these things. From a personal perspective, before we go into any more stories, you've been on here in the past, but we have a lot of new listeners here. This might be a fresh thing for them, totally new. What is just the basic emotional tenor that you have right now as you look out at civil liberties and economic liberties? And Glenn watches these very closely. He's been studying it closely. How do you feel right now when you see stories like this and others that we'll discuss?
I was on a local talk show, a couple weeks ago, and it was a conservative talk show.
Yeah.
And we were talking about economics, and they asked me a question and said, talking about education just a little bit, and with the people being in government schools being supposedly dumbed down, which I don't believe is true. I just believe that kids don't have things explained to them in ways that they can understand or in ways that they're attracted to.
Yeah.
But in any case, how do we overcome all this? And I said, I think that there's going to be a crisis. And I think that crisis, myself, I think that crisis is going to be economic in nature, which also means it's going to affect civil liberties, because what people don't understand about the connection between economics and personal liberty is that in order for the government to seize economic power, it also has to seize power over your personal life. It has to determine what you're going to do, what you're going to be allowed to do, how much you're going to earn, how much they're going to take away through taxes, and all those sort of things.
Yeah.
So they affect one another. The government, by centrally planning economics, also has to centrally plan every other aspect of your life. They cut me off when I said that I thought that there was going to be a crisis, and they didn't let me go on. Not that they were being rude, but they were just like, well, we're not quite that pessimistic. But I wasn't being pessimistic.
No.
Okay? Because I think, and I'm not looking forward to this crisis by any means, but I think what's going to happen on the other side of that is that libertarians and people that believe in voluntarism and people that understand economics and people like you and me are going to have the ability at that point to, people are going to listen to us. Okay, because we've been talking about this stuff for a long time, especially the economics. We've been talking about what's going to happen, and people are going to see, just like they did with Ron Paul, that what we're talking about is real-life stuff. You know, it's too bad that the presidential election wasn't about a year later than it was.
Yes.
Ron Paul has been talking about what's happening right now for 20 years, but people ignored him because it wasn't happening then. The timing wasn't right.
Right.
So what I believe is going to happen is that we're going to have a crisis. I'm very pessimistic in the short term.
Yeah.
Because, as we'll get into, with all the economic stuff that's going on, I just don't see any way out of that. And, of course, that, as I said, that will also affect civil liberties. That will affect every aspect of our life. But I am very optimistic on the other side of that. I actually think that America can enter a golden age of liberty and freedom because people will reject the ideas of statism and authoritarianism because they're going to realize that they don't work. And the only reason that people aren't attracted to the ideas of liberty and freedom now, there's two reasons. First of all, most people have never heard about it.
Right.
And second of all, they've been taught that that's not the right way. I mean, we all get frustrated because we tell people about liberty and about economic policy and sound money and all that sort of stuff, and it just doesn't sink in.
Yeah.
We lead the horse to water and it doesn't drink.
Yes, yes.
Well, the horse, its whole life, the person, their whole life, has been told that that's a poisoned well.
Oh, yeah, right.
And that's what we're trying to overcome.
Yeah.
And as I said, in the short term, I'm very pessimistic. I'm not kidding you, Gard. I have 6 inches worth of paper of stories that I just found from the past couple days, which are extremely disturbing to me.
Well, Glenn, and I look at some of these things, like you mentioned, there's going to be a crisis. In a way, we have, for people's personal liberties, we have a series of crises every day in the United States, everywhere, for small businesses, large businesses. These cafe standards, these auto emission standards, that's a crisis that's going to apply to automakers, even if they're in good condition. You've got this stupid proposal from this guy, Alan Grayson, in Florida for the Vacation Act. That's another crisis that will be applied. All of these things that people come into them with the best of intentions, and what they don't realize is that the best of intentions, when acted upon and actuated through force, are evil. They are counterproductive.